The first school of philosophy, Miletus. Burning with the desire to understand nature and determined to progress on this path, man was no longer satisfied with mythological answers. What needed to be done was clear: to observe nature and investigate the source of everything, the first cause. In this episode, we will touch upon that important period when the foundations of science and philosophy were laid. The first school of science and philosophy of this period, the Milesian School, and the philosophers of this school, known as the natural philosophers. We will also examine the answers given by these thinkers to the question, what is Arche, which is considered the first question of philosophy. We will examine the answers given to this question by these thinkers. But first, to understand the intellectual environment in which this school emerged, we will talk about the 7 sages, who are considered the first thinkers in the Greek tradition, and their concise sayings that have survived to this day, warning people both politically and morally. We will also emphasize that considering this period in comparison with the epic period of Homer and Hesiod, where mythological thought was dominant, is of great importance for a better understanding of the mythology-science-philosophy relationship in Greek culture. The 7 sages and Thales, the first to gradually break away from mythological thought, were the natural philosophers, or the first cosmologists who grew up in Ionia, a Greek colony located on the Aegean coast of Anatolia, especially in Miletus and other cities. The period in which they lived was called the pre-Socratic period in the history of philosophy by 19th century scholars. Thus, it was desired to draw attention to the important distinction between the ideas developed by these thinkers and the observation-based methods they used, and the philosophy and philosophical methods developed by Socrates 470–399 BC and his followers. Cleobulus of Lindos, the ruler of the city of Lindos on the island of Rhodes, says, "Moderation is best. Occupy your mind with good things. Do not be thoughtless or rude. Educate your daughters as well as your sons. Exercise. Prefer listening to talking. Be a friend to good, an enemy to evil. Avoid injustice. Do not be overcome by pleasures. Never resort to violence. Marry someone equal to yourself, for if your wife is superior to you, her relatives will rule over you. Do not be arrogant when you are rich, nor belittle yourself if you become poor. Learn to endure the whims of fate with fortitude. The one who is in a higher position than you is your master, not your relative." Solon of Athens, the lawmaker who prepared the laws that shaped Athenian democracy, says, "Words are the mirror of actions. The strongest and most powerful is the one who obeys the law. Never lie. Pursue important goals. Do not rush to make friends and do not abandon them after you have made them. Learn to obey before you command. Try to give good advice, not what your friend likes. Let your mind be your guide. Stay away from bad friends. Show respect to the gods, respect to the elders. It is not possible to please everyone in important matters." Chilon of Sparta, a Spartan politician who lived in the 6th century BC, says, "Hold your tongue, especially at a formal dinner. Do not threaten anyone. Know yourself. Be with your friend in bad times more than in good. Do not go overboard at your wedding. Show respect to the elderly. Seek advice for your own good. Be willing to lose rather than make unjust gains. Do not rejoice in the misfortune of others. Be merciful when you are strong. The purity of gold is tested by fire, the goodness and badness of man by gold. Do not let your tongue outrun your thought. Control your anger. Do not chase after impossible things. Obey the laws. Remember the dead with kindness." Thales of Miletus, the first philosopher and mathematician, says, "The oldest of existing things is God, for he is uncreated." Thales, one of the most important representatives of this tradition of uttering aphorisms, that is, practical thought, whose roots, according to the historian Herodotus, go back to the Phoenicians. Using the mathematical knowledge he learned from the Egyptians, he began to examine the universe as a whole and sought an answer to what the first cause of the universe, that is, the Arche, was, independent of mythological stories. According to the Milesian School and all other pre-Socratic thinkers, the Arche was a material thing or made of matter. Everything came into being from this matter and eventually returned to it. In this process, that material entity remained as the fundamental entity, only changing its form. Therefore, this fundamental entity was one. That is why the thinkers belonging to the Milesian school are called thinkers who advocate the monist view. Thales, the first of these monist thinkers, claimed that this material entity was water. One of the two sayings left from him was, "Water is the first principle of all things." Because according to Thales, water had an infinite life force, and just as a log floats in a river, the world floated on water. According to Aristotle, the reason why Thales said that water is the basis of everything is that all living things and plants need water to live, or that the seed and nourishment of beings are moist. Moisture produces and maintains the heat necessary for the survival of beings, and the source of this moisture is water. It is also important that water, by its nature, can take different states, such as solid, liquid, vapor, and in this sense, there is nothing else like it. The second saying left from Thales is as follows: "Everything is full of gods." According to this saying, for Thales, there is nothing in nature that is not divine, that is, without life force. Everything is alive, that is, everything has life force. For example, the lodestone is alive because it can attract iron. If water is the source of everything and everything comes from water, then the principle of water is a god, that is, a vital force. Thales was also an astronomer. He showed that there are 365 days in a year and calculated the summer and winter solstices. But perhaps most importantly, he predicted the solar eclipse that took place on May 28th, 585 BC. Because this knowledge would later be considered the first knowledge that started philosophy and science in the history of Western thought.